Welcome to the new and improved Olmstead Workshop. I'm Jordan Olmstead, and today we're going to be taking a look at doing a 3D end grain cutting board.
We start by building some laminations using maple cherry maple and maple walnut maple in a 2-to-1 ratio. So for my pieces, I went with a 1/2 inch maple on either side of a 1-inch core. First, we start by setting our blade angle to 60 degrees. That'll give us the appropriate parallelogram shape for starting our board. I then set my fence to about a 1/16 of an inch to true up the edge and really maximize the amount of stock I had. As always, when cutting against the fence like this, be very aware of your feed rate as well as the possibility of kickback. Here we set our fence to the same thickness as our gang of boards. This way, when we get the 3D effect in the end, the shapes are all cubes. If you make these strips thinner, they tend to be more rectangular, but the effect still works. Now we're going to cut our parallelograms back to square. Pay attention to the direction the wood is now facing as we've rotated it so the maple is on either side of the original piece. The more precise you are in this step, the more profound your effect will be and the more crisp the design will look as all the corners will meet in a perpendicular fashion. At this point, you should have 2 big piles of maple and walnut strips. As we begin to lay out our strips for our glue up, it's important to pay attention to the zigzag pattern created by the cherry and walnut. Also be mindful you need to end on the opposite species you started with, so walnut, then cherry. Once you've got all your strips laid out in a zigzag fashion, we can begin the glue up. It's important to use plenty of glue at this step, and make sure you get a good amount of squeeze out when you get them into the clamps. And it's always preferable to leave them overnight. I then ran my glued up boards through the thickness planer to bring them all to a uniform thickness. A drum sander would be another excellent option to do this if you happen to have one. Taking the freshly planed down boards, I took it over to the table saw and trued up both sides. And then using a stop block on the table, I began cutting my board into our final strips. Pay attention this time to where your stop block is because that's what's going to dictate how thick your final board is. Taking all our freshly cut strips, we're going to lay them out again in the order that they need to be glued up. Again, pay close attention to this final pattern because we need to maintain that zigzag between maple and walnut to get the desired cubed effect. During the final glue up, I elected to put a trim of cherry around the edge of the board just for the purely aesthetic design, and then one more trip through the thickness planer to make it all nice and uniform. After treating the edges to the edge sander, I took it over to the router table to put an 8-inch round over onto the top surface. This could definitely be done carefully with a handheld router. I then sanded both sides of the board up to 220 grit using the random orbital sander. Then over on the drill press using a fence and a stop block, I drilled a pilot hole 3/4 in and down into each corner of the cutting block. Then nearing the end of the project, it was time to mark it with the brand. Finally, it was time to treat all sides of the cutting board with a mixture of mineral oil and beeswax. This is an all-natural, food-safe finish. After buffing the finish, the only thing left to do was attach the rubber non-slip feet, and these boards were done. Thanks for stopping by the Olmstead Workshop. Please like and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more, and we'll see you next time, everybody.